Okay, so today is the first one in a series of webinars that we're looking at 4.10. So 4.10 is available now. We've been working on that. So today is the first one in the 4.10 series, and accompanying that is iOS. There's an iOS that supports 4.10, or we can also say that there's 4.10 that supports an updated iOS. So there are some things that are going to be applicable only to the apps, so NeoPack, etc., and don't really have anything to do with iOS. There are some things that are new in iOS which are totally independent of the apps. Doesn't really matter what version of the apps you're on. And then there are many things which rely on both. So you'll see new things in the apps that are there for iOS. There are new functions in iOS that will need you to do something or use a new feature in the apps in 4.10. So there's a bit of an intersection through those two updates. And today's topic is one of them. Today's topic, we're looking at something new that is to do with identify and order processing. So that's our first topic. And I'll talk about next week's topic at the end of today's webinar. Now, you're going to ask me straight away, when are these going to be available? Because that's what you normally do. They're available now. So if you go to our downloads page on our website, you will see we've already posted 4.10 as beta versions. So they're beta because we're still working on them, in the sense that there will be more things added. There's some things in there that we've hidden because I don't want to show you until we do the webinar, just to protect you from yourself, so you don't go jumping into stuff you don't understand yet. As I said, there'll be more things added to them. And apart from myself and Mark and the boys, no one has used them yet. So if there's any bugs, you need to let us know and we'll get them fixed. I've been using them since May, so for a couple of months, and have ironed out a lot of issues, and we've done a lot of refinements. So how do you actually go about installing them? Of course, you download the app. First thing to consider though, pause 1 second. If you're not on 4.9 now, you'll say, for example, if you're on 4.8, I urge you to go to 4.9 first, run that tsadmin to update your database to 4.9, then go to 4.10. I wouldn't go directly to from 4.8 to 4.10. So let's assume you are already on 4.9. You download your apps. The first thing you do is ensure you've got backup of your database. That should be standard. You always should have a up-to-date backup of your database. This is particularly important when updating to a new version for the first time. There are lots of changes to the database structure and schema in these apps. There's no going back. When you do update to 4.10, you won't be able to go back to 4.9. So it is very important that you have current backup of your database before you back up. When you download, say, NeoPack, and you've got your backup, you need to run tsadmin first. Running tsadmin before you run NeoPack will update your database. For example, my Timestone database is still a 4.9. So I will get that message, database requires updating. Do you wish to update it now? So you'll need to see that message. You need to see that message. Run it, it will update your Timestone database as required. Now, if you are an iOS customer as well, and you are moving to 4.10, let us know and we will update your site. We're not going to update your site unless you tell us you want us to. There's really no harm. We could move you to iOS is called 3.7, but that really is only useful to us. We're not going to update you to that version, not yet anyway, unless you move to 4.10. So if you do move to 4.10, let us know and we will update your site, and the two things will be compatible. Starting with the features that we show you today, it will need both those versions updated. So when you're on tsadmin, you will need to see that message that says your database is about to be updated. From there on, you can run NeoPack, NeoComp, NeoGroup, etc., etc., etc. Okay, I will leave my Timestone database as 4.9. My training database is already at 4.10. Okay. So today we are going to look at what's new in Identify. I've got a job that I've uploaded. The job is called Identify. Don't let that confuse you. I'll show you in TSIOS. There it is there. I've uploaded it and it's up there as an identified job. With Identify, you enter a job key. My job key, I've hacked it. Again, this won't apply to you, but my job key is just called Las Vegas, so it's easy for me to remember the key. Again, don't let that confuse you. And when I hit open, I should come to the Identify screen where I can order for either a child or a family in my case. Now, for each of these webinars, they're going to be a little bit more than just showing you what's new. I'll take the opportunity at each time maybe to go over an older concept for the newer users or people who aren't doing this yet but maybe want to. So this will be the first point. I'm just going to show you how I got to this situation very quickly, how I got to be able to place an order for a child instead of a subject and a family, and so how we got to some of these options here. So in TSIOS, for that job, I've come into job keys and Identify. I'm going to be I've enabled Identify for this job, and I'm going to be prompting for subjects, and I'm going to be prompting for families. So the parent is going to be able to order for a child, a subject, but also for the siblings, for the brothers and sisters, what we call families. But it doesn't say subject and families up there. It actually says child, because I've written child in there. Replace the description for subject with child. And when I'm prompting for a family, it's asking me for what class. And I'll come to that in a second. But in Timestone Talk, what we're asking for is what folder. And again, instead of folder, which means a Timestone term, means nothing to your customers, we're replacing the word folder with class. So that's why you're seeing child and class there, not subject and folder. For families, I could have changed the word family. Here, I could have said, instead of family, I could have said siblings. And that would display siblings here, siblings in there. Wherever you see the word family, that would have been replaced by siblings if I had so desired. So that's how I got to that point, how I got to be able to prompt for child and family, and how I've changed those labels to something I prefer rather than the Timestone labels, which are subject, folder, family. Now you'll see a customer got confused and asked me about this. With the family, I'm prompting for the family name, family members, and a class. The question was, well, what does that class mean for the family? I understand if we're prompting for a folder for a subject, which I'm not. You see, for the subject, I'm only asking for their first and last name. I'm not even asking what class they belong to, what folder they belong to. Now, I could, if I wanted to do that, I would have come to here, identify subject folders, hit that, prompt for the folder. Then I have the option of making it mandatory, so they'd have to fill something in there. And then whether you want to select from a drop-down list of your folder names, which is really useful. If you just do this, for example, they'd be entering a folder name and they're not going to enter it correctly. They're not going to have the right name and it's all yucky. Selecting from a list then just makes it far easier because the list of names. Okay. See now, even for the subjects, for the child, it's also changed the word siblings up there. It's prompting for the kids' home folder, but we're calling it class, and they can choose from a drop-down list. That has not much use really, apart from it may help you identify the kid when it comes to identifying them. In iOS 2, late in iOS 2 and beginnings of iOS 3, we actually got rid of that altogether because it was just confusing people. They didn't know what to put in there. So we had gotten rid of it, hard-coded it. We've put it back and you turn it on or off with that option. I'm going to turn it back to where it was, turn it off. So that's just a bit of a background of how we got to be prompting for what you see there. But in answer to the photographer's question, what is the point of prompting for a folder for a family? Subjects, yeah, belong to folders, but family don't really belong to folders. The reason you would do that, if you want to, is to help or to set where this family product will sort in your NeoPack queue. So you could enter, for example, I don't know, let's order for these guys. Brady Bunch kids. I don't know, too many. And let's say, because the message, I've gone over it now, but the message said select the class of the oldest kid. I don't know what class Greg was in, but 9D is the biggest I've got. Mr. Brady, I forget his name. What was his name? Anyway, Rob, probably. And we can place an order.
Mike
Brady. And the actor was Robert Reed. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. You can't, let's check out. Okay, so I've quickly placed an order for that family. So that does bring up the question of how families are sorted in the queue. So we're going to quickly look at that. Open that job in NeoPack. Okay, and I've already, before we even download that order, let's just have a look. Now, if you prefer to read about this, how families are sorted in the queue, rather than listen to my voice, and that's totally understandable, you can go to our knowledge base, and there is a document, how families are sorted in the queue. And then from there, a couple of links, how to assign a folder to a family and setting the responsible family member. So given that this is well documented, they're quite easy to read documents, those three. How families are sorted in the queue, I'll be a little bit brief because you can read about it here. But families, as you know, for example, we have the Robinsons, Will, Judy, and Penny. We haven't put any members against that family. It's just a family entity, no members. But families, you could drag those subjects into this family and associate Will, Judy, and Penelope to this family. We've done that with the Simpson kids. So we've put members into that family, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie. Now, what wins? If you have, in terms of sorting, what wins? If you have copied subjects into a family and then assigned one of those families as the responsible member by hitting, I think it is Control M. Yes, set responsible family member, Control M. What we have said is Lisa, no surprises there, is the responsible family member. Practically what that means is that family products will sort with her in the queue. They'll sort and print with her in the queue. They'll go home with her pile of photos. Let's have a look at the queue. Mode, queue. Okay, there's a family order for the Simpson kids, and you can see it is sorting with Lisa. The queue is being sorted by folder and then subject. So Lisa being in 8B, the family product sorts with 8B. So that one will win. If you've done that, the family products will always sort with that subject, regardless of whatever else you may do. If you do nothing, the family products are at the end of the queue in alphabetical order. For example, the Robinson family there's an order for them. It's a paper order, but it doesn't matter. They had no family members assigned, nothing else done to it. So that family product, well, where's it going to appear in the queue? It's got to appear somewhere. We made the decision that it'll be at the end of the queue. So the default behavior is that family products sort at the end of the queue. If you have set subjects and then set a responsible subject, the family product sorts with that subject. For example, let me prove that point. We go to, although I will have to, if we make Bart the responsible member, I would have to close the job and open it, and that we will fix. Just a little refresh thing. Mode Q. You see now that family product is printing with Bart because I made Bart responsible. And obviously I could do the same for Maggie. So, but the Robinson family had no members in it, let alone setting one as the main subject, the responsible subject. So its family order prints at the end. However, there is something else you can do. There's something in between those two extremes. You can, let's go to the family view. There's the Robinson family. You see some of these families have got a folder against them. You can assign a folder to a family. You just grab the family and, for example, we'll put the Robinsons in 7A. What we've done is assign folder 7A to the Robinsons. If I go into the 7A, you can see the Robinson family unit is sort of 7A. They're not a subject, it's a family, and we're saying the family belongs to 7A. And what that does, the effect that does, is when I close and refresh, like I said, we have already fixed this, but I'm just not using that version. See, the Robinson family now sorts up there in 7A. So that's the in-between. They're your three options of how families sort in the queue. We go back to here. If there is a responsible subject, the family product will always sort with that subject. If there is no responsible subject, it will sort with the specific folder if you've set one. And in the absence of both of those things, they'll just appear at the end of the queue. So that's how families sort. Now, you're quite right in thinking, but Dina, what's that got to do with anything to do with iOS? The original question was, oops, let me go back to here. What does that do? If the parent sets a folder here, like we did for the Brady Bunch, and the folder is created, the family is created when you identify that order, it sets that folder for you. It saves you having to drag and copy the family into that folder. So let's do that. Orders, mode, orders, download online orders. Okay, there's the order that we just placed. We go to identify it. Now, that family doesn't exist, but you can create the family based on the information the parent entered. We'll hit create. Now, if we go into details mode, you'll see that's the family that got created, and you can see it's put it in 9D. Now we'll go to match mode. 9D was what Mrs. Brady, no, it wasn't Mrs. Brady, it was Mike ordered. He said, my oldest kid is in 9D. We'll go into match mode. And I haven't got the full Brady kids, but we'll match these kids to the Bradys. And if we go to the queue, they're over here with 9D with this guy, Victor Mark. So that was a roundabout way of showing you what this field does. This field, if you're prompting for it for the family, sets that family to the folder in NeoPack when the family is created. I underline when the family is created. If the family had already been created in NeoPack, this won't override it. Whatever the parent does in here won't change what's in NeoPack. If the photographer has gone to the trouble of manually making families, it doesn't matter what the parent does here. It's only if there's no family in NeoPack when you download the order and it creates the family that this class is used. But I'm thinking if the photographer has gone to the trouble, has already made families beforehand, they won't be creating families with the online data. They'd be matching to an existing family. All right, so that was all preamble. How families are sorted in the queue was a side effect of what the rest of what we're going to talk about, which are actually not going to take long at all. Easy. And that will be common through some of these webinars. It's more a show and tell. A lot of the stuff doesn't actually need a lot of training. It's quite easy, so that's good. Okay. So none of that was new, the sorting of the families, but it needed explanation. What is new is this. We'll go back to this job. Whenever we have set a job for identify, your only option for order processing was to download the orders into NeoPack as pre-orders. In fact, if you clicked that and clicked that at the same time, the software would yell at you and not allow that combination and force the orders to go into NeoPack. That has changed, and you now can send identify orders to fulfill. It won't stop me doing that combination now, and I hit upload. And I'll go, while that's uploading, I'm going to go here and continue shopping. I'm going to refresh everything there so we don't get confused. Okay, so this job now, this identify job, we have got it still as identify, still identifies on, but the order handling, the order processing, these orders will be printed in fulfill from now on, any orders I place and download. So let me do that. Let me order something. I might as well do Bart. Whoop. Okie dokes. So I've got that particular order. Now I'll leave that job open, but I'm going to launch Fulfill. Now, as you know, Fulfill, unlike NeoPack, Fulfill, you don't need to trigger the order download. They just download in dribs and drabs as they arrive and as you launch it. And launch Fulfill. Get rid of that. Okay. What you can see is some jobs which highlight, or some orders which color coded in a tealy green sort of thing, and they have the familiar question mark. And there's the order I just placed for Bart. If you click on that, you don't see anything below because these orders have not yet been identified. But that order I just placed, plus some others that I'd been placing through yesterday, have downloaded into Fulfill because this identify job is being sent to Fulfill. How do you identify them? In exactly the same way as you do in NeoPack, including you sort of have to open the job because you may get identify orders coming in from lots of different jobs. You can't just hit Control-I and identify across lots of different jobs at the same time. You do need to open the specific job. You can do that just by filtering for it, okay? Or you can go File, Open Specific Job and get to that same window. Now I've got make sure I get them all. I've only got that job called Identify, and I can hit Control-I to bring up the familiar Identify window. From this point, it is exactly the same as what you're doing in NeoPack, and I can identify in that's what I supplied. It's found Bart. I can just confirm. In fact, I'll probably just confirm all. And away we go. And had I matched images and whatnot, you would see the things in the queue. So in terms of identify, it is identical, whether you do it in Fulfill or whether you do it in NeoPack. It's just the destination where the order is handled is different. In fact, the orders were downloaded to Fulfill, but you could have identified them in NeoPack. If I open this job, well, it was already open, so I'm going to close it and reopen it. Mode, go to orders mode. You can see all these downloaded, see all these Fulfill orders are the ones we just downloaded. I could have identified in here. So even though they were downloaded into Fulfill, I could have identified them in NeoPack. They still would have processed and printed in Fulfill, but I could have used NeoPack to identify them. And vice versa is also true. I could have had them download into NeoPack and use Fulfill to identify. So the two are interchangeable. You open the job, but you can use NeoPack to identify the orders that are printing in Fulfill if you prefer to do it that way, or you can just do what I did and identify them in Fulfill itself. So that's it for that part. Identify orders can be handled in Fulfill. Why would you do that? That's up to you. I think this could end up being one of those things that now that you can do it, you'll find reasons to do it. I was talking to a particular photographer who thought this was wonderful because all their jobs, all their schools here in Australia are identified, and way after the photos have been delivered to the school, people are still using that job key to order little bits and pieces of reorders, which quite frankly are a pain in the ass to handle because they've got to know they've come in, then they've got to go to NeoPack, open that job, download the orders, which is only going to be one, maybe two, identify them through there and print them. The fact that they can now change those jobs after delivering them to the school, they come into TSIOS and change the handling from that, which is what they started with, change it to that. Then any bits and pieces of reorders they get that have still used that job key, just drop into Fulfill automatically, and they may change the delivery option so they have to be posted out. But it's just a far smoother workflow. They don't have to know to go to NeoPack and open and download orders. They'll just appear automatically in Fulfill. So quite handy. The same photographer also said, we probably won't bother sending out subject keys anymore. Well, what's the point? They've already got a job key. A lot of them still end up ordering the job key anyway. So we won't even send them subject keys. They can continue ordering the job key. They only take one photo, or they take more than one, but the kid only ends up with one. So seeing the image isn't important in iOS because they're holding it in their hand when they need to reorder anyway. They can just use the job key in the same way they ordered in the first time, except now the order will go to Fulfill. Now there's a delivery option to post at home, and they don't even have to have the whole infrastructure in place of getting a subject key out to those people. So there's one example, and one photographer, that's how they're going to use the fact that now Fulfill can handle identify. Okay, so that's it. Fulfill, not quite it, but that's it for that part of it. Fulfill can handle identify orders. Mark, were there any questions on that bit before I move to the second bit, which is very related?
No, none so far.
Okay, good. All right. Coupled with that is what you can see on the screen here is the ability to do split order processing. Those two options, download and process orders with Fulfill, download and the orders into NeoPack, are exactly the same as you've seen. But you can also do split order processing. Up until now, you set the job as either going to Fulfill or either going to NeoPack. Now you can have the same job doing both, and what we're calling split order processing. For example, the most common usage, I think, will be this. The identify orders will still go to NeoPack. So identify orders, processes, pre-orders. As soon as you click down here, the two options up the top get blacked out. So the identifier orders will go to NeoPack. What about what we're calling real key orders, subject key, folder key, family key? If you enter something other than an identifier key, you also have the choice. So those two things are all interchangeable. You've got effectively 4 options. The most common combination, I think, will be this: processes, pre-orders, real orders, process will fulfill. Let's stop and think about what that does. You upload a job and you hand out the job key as for identifier. Very standard, and most people order that way. Then you do the shoot, and you've got a makeup day, absentee day booked, maybe not for 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road. In the meantime, you've started to hand out subject keys for the people who have been photographed, and maybe they get a proof with a subject key or for their reorder purposes. However, there's still all the kids who weren't photographed the first time who have got the job key, and you still want their orders. If they jump online the day before makeup day, you still want their orders to be handled as pre-orders with identifier. But any kid who's already been photographed and is now holding a subject key, you want those orders to go to fulfill. I think that's a very believable scenario, and we can now do that. So for the same job, we can have identifier orders going to pre-orders, for example, and subject key orders going to fulfill at the same time. Let's do that. I hope that sort of made sense, and I think that workflow or that case study, that scenario, is probably the most common use of split order processing. But again, you may find other uses for this. Ookly dookly, we've done that. So let's go back to the site. So what we have said is any identifier orders will go to fulfill. So the identifier orders, you put in the job key, and we'll do the atoms. Okay, so you place an order for her. Now, she may be ordering this 3 weeks after photography day. It might be the day before the makeup shoot. Then, but her brother, her brother's name was Pugsley, wasn't it? He's got a subject key. So you put in the subject key, same job. I haven't touched anything with the job. There he is. He sees his image. He happens to have one. Okay, so that's done. So what should happen now is Fulfill will download the order for Pugsley, and in NeoPack we will see there's the order for no, where is it? Online. Where's the order I just placed? I've lost it. Oh, there it is. Wednesday. Yeah, that's the order I just placed for Wednesday Adams. That's an identify order. So I go Control I and I can identify that order. I'm having delirium here. Where is it? So our family's checked up there in the filter. There it is there. So that's the order I just placed for Wednesday. And that's an identify order, so we're handling it in Fulfill. In NeoPack. And the order for her brother is there. The order for her brother, because he ordered with a subject key, came into Fulfill. same job, was up there with this one set of parameters, subject key orders came here, job key being identify orders went to NeoPack. So that's what we're calling split order processing. And you can use any of those two combinations. Well, that's probably all I want to show, except there was one thing I was going to show earlier is, it's kind of off topic a little bit, but to do with families, when I said, families may or may not have the subjects dragged into them, one of the advantages now of dragging subjects into a family, if you're doing families, is that the parent can use any key to order for any of those kids, including the family. Because I've associated these three subjects into that family, you can give out to the parent just the family key or any one of these subject keys. Let's take Maggie's key, for example. Let's say this is the key the mother hits the site with. And I'm putting in one of those kids' keys, okay, which is Lisa, and we can order for her. But when the mother hits continue shopping, she sees all of her kids and can order for any of her kids, and can even order the family unit if you did family photos. That's because of the switching that we've now introduced. That's a story for another day, but it is one advantage of perhaps thinking about dragging siblings into a family, because then the parent with one key can order for each of those kids. In fact, you could have it so that when they enter one of the keys, instead of we entered Lisa's key and it went straight to there, you can set up your option so that when you enter the key, it lands here. So whatever key they enter, they'll see here, and then they can decide, yep, keep going for Lisa, or pick Margaret or Bart. I'm done. Mark, questions?
Yeah. Can you go back to the TSIOS screen where the split order is, and show that a little bit again? And how is the split order, like if you have part of it going to fulfill and part of it going to NeoPack, when you have a condition set for a snippet, what's it going to honor?
Yep, that's because it's per entity. So I should have pointed out, yes, it's split order split job processing. So if I'm a parent and I'm holding two keys, and one's a job key for identify and the other one's a subject key, I can't use both those keys in the one order. That makes sense. That would be, you can't have the one order, some of that going to NeoPack and some of that going to fulfill. So an order needs to go, all of that order needs to go either to NeoPack or to fulfill. So you can't have part of the order going to NeoPack, part of the order going to fulfill. Therefore, if you try to put in a job key and a subject key in the same order, it won't let you. You'll get an error message, a snippet that will say you can't do this, you need to empty your cart. So that's perhaps part of answering your question. Excuse me. The second bit, it depends. If you've put in the condition evaluator is constantly looking at your screen. Every time you do something, add to cart, every time you switch from cart to shop and back and forth, the conditions get evaluated. So if you've put in a job key, which is going to identify, the condition that works for identify will be respected, because at that point in time, you're in identify mode. Your entity is identified. If you've put in a subject key, well, then you're not an identifier, you're in fulfill processing. So it will know that. So the conditions don't just kick in when you upload the job. The conditions get evaluated at every step that you do throughout the ordering process. Did I answer your question?
I think so. I'll get back to you if it hasn't.
Okay. Well, in that case, we're done. Thanks for joining us, and bye for now.